It started in a neighborhood that looked perfect on the surface: green lawns, clean sidewalks, and houses lined up like they were copied from the same blueprint. People would look at it and say, "This is the American dream." But for Marcus Jameson, a young black lawyer in his early 30s, that dream came with shadows nobody wanted to admit. Marcus wasn't just any lawyer. He had worked hard, beaten the odds, and already earned respect in the courtroom. But at home, he couldn't escape the quiet, sharp claws of the HOA, the homeowners association that claimed to keep order, but, in truth, police people like him differently. It began with little things. A letter about his front door paint being too dark. A warning about the flowers his mother planted in the yard. Notes about his younger brother parking in the driveway. Rules, they called them. But Marcus noticed something. Those rules weren't being enforced on his white neighbors. They hosted loud barbecues, parked cars in the street overnight, and no one said a word. At first, Marcus brushed it off. He told himself it wasn't worth the fight. He had bigger cases on his desk, bigger injustices to face in the courtroom. But then the letters grew harsher. The fines came rolling in. And one evening, a notice appeared on his door, threatening foreclosure over unpaid violations. That was the moment Marcus understood. This wasn't about paint or flowers or parking. This was about power. This was about someone looking at him and deciding he didn't belong. And he knew, deep down, they had picked the wrong man to try and push out. From then on, things only got worse. Every week, there was a new complaint. Some were ridiculous, like grass that wasn't uniform enough or a garden decoration that didn't fit community standards. Others cut deeper, like anonymous notes accusing him of bringing down property values. The message was clear: you don't belong here. Marcus's wife, Alicia, could see the toll it was taking on him. She would watch him come home late, his shoulders heavy from the courtroom, only to find another envelope from the HOA waiting on the kitchen table. "Marcus, maybe we should just pay them off. Avoid the stress," she whispered one night. His mother, too, warned him, "Son, don't let them drag you down. They've got power, and people like us know what happens when power gets threatened." But Marcus couldn't bend. Not this time. "If I give in now," he told Alicia, "what message does that send? Not just to them, but to every neighbor watching, every kid in this community who looks like me." So he started building his defense, not in anger, but with precision. He documented everything: dates, fines, letters. He recorded how other families broke the same so-called rules without punishment. He spoke quietly to neighbors, gathering statements. Each file he created was like a brick, stacking into a wall of evidence. He wasn't just preparing for himself. He was preparing for everyone who had ever been pushed around by people hiding behind clipboards and bylaws. The HOA thought they could bully Marcus into silence. Instead, they had awakened a man who had spent his life learning how to fight with truth, with law, and with unshakable dignity. When the case finally went to court, the HOA walked in like they'd already won. Their lawyers wore smug smiles, tossing around words like community standards and uniformity. They had money. They had connections. They had years of experience crushing residents into compliance. But Marcus was different. He wasn't just a homeowner defending himself. He was a lawyer who had seen the system from the inside. He stood tall, voice calm but razor sharp. He laid out the evidence one piece at a time: selective enforcement, discriminatory remarks, proof of neighbors doing the same things without punishment. The courtroom shifted as he spoke. People leaned in. Even the judge's expression changed as the pattern became undeniable. The HOA's case, which had looked so strong on paper, began to crack under the weight of truth. Still, the ruling didn't end the fight. The judge acknowledged unfair treatment, but stopped short of stripping the HOA of its authority. The association took it as a green light to push harder. They filed appeal after appeal, determined to drag Marcus through every level of court until he broke. But Marcus didn't break. He appealed too. And as the case climbed, it caught attention, first local reporters, then civil rights groups. People began to realize this wasn't just about one man's house. It was about how power gets abused in ways that look harmless on the surface but cut deep underneath. And with every step upward, Marcus grew more resolved. He was ready to take this fight as far as it needed to go, even if that meant the Supreme Court of the United States. The day finally came. The marble steps of the Supreme Court stretched out before Marcus, shining in the morning light. He paused at the bottom, briefcase in hand, taking it in. He had dreamed of arguing here one day. He never thought it would be for his own home, his own right to live without harassment. Inside, the chamber was silent, heavy with history. The HOA's lawyer spoke first, framing their case as simple. Rules were rules, and Marcus had broken them. They painted him as difficult, unwilling to cooperate. But when Marcus rose to speak, everything shifted. He didn't just argue law. He told a story, the story of his family, of generations who had struggled just to own property in this country. He reminded the court how discrimination often hides behind polished language, dressed up as order or standards. And he made it clear, this was not just about one man's fight. It was about whether institutions could quietly strip dignity from people under the cover of rules. The justices questioned him, pressed him, tested every angle. But Marcus held his ground. His answers were precise, his evidence airtight, his conviction unshakable. When he finished, the room sat in silence. No applause, no shouts, but a silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were listening. For Marcus, that moment was everything. Whatever the ruling, he had stood where few ever stood. He had faced power with truth, fear with courage, and he had not flinched. Months later, the decision came down. Marcus won. The Supreme Court ruled that the HOA had discriminated, that they had weaponized their authority to target him unjustly. The ruling didn't just protect Marcus, it set a precedent. It drew a line in the sand for every HOA in America. Their power was not absolute, and it could never be used to deny people their dignity. That evening, Marcus stood on his porch with Alicia by his side. The same porch where the notices once hung now felt different. Neighbors came by, some ashamed, some grateful, some simply curious. And Marcus realized this was bigger than property lines or lawns. This was about proving that silence is not survival, that standing tall can change not just your life, but the lives of countless others. The HOA board that once mocked him was gone, their authority dismantled. In their place grew something rare in that neighborhood: respect. Slowly, people began to see that community wasn't about control, it was about fairness, about dignity. Years later, law students would ask Marcus about the case. He always said the same thing: it wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to bow when they tried to bend me. It was about speaking when silence seemed easier. And most of all, it was about dignity. That's worth fighting for, no matter how high you have to climb. Marcus's name became more than a headline. It became a reminder that justice, though slow, always finds a voice.